Glenn Beck program. We have a lot to talk about tonight. This is one that I want you to share with your friends. America right now seems to be talking about a couple of things. Donald Trump, who is trying to find the president's birth certificate with a metal detector or whatever, and that the president didn't recognize Easter. He celebrates Passover and Ramadan, but apparently didn't fully recognize Easter. And neither did Google, you know. But they did recognize this one. This is great. And then they followed up with celebrating renowned French-American ornithologist John James Audubon. This was today. Ooh. Wow. I think there was a holiday in between those two things there at Google, but, you know, you may have missed him. I mean, sure, you missed Jesus, but you got the bird guy. So, I mean, that's who I'd go for, too, is the bird guy. Look, here's the point. This is all a distraction. I mean, the president loves the birth certificate, loves the birth certificate argument, loves it. It's a poke in the eye, and it just makes people look ridiculous. It really does. And Easter, it stops us from talking about what's really happening. If we're arguing he didn't issue an Easter message, really, then we don't focus on what's really happening. Look at the things that are happening not far away on the other side of the world, but on our own border, in our own bank accounts. What freedom is Cass Sunstein regulating out of your life today? Fortunately for us, we meet here every day at 5 o'clock. Unfortunately for those in the White House, we meet here every day at 5 o'clock. We won't be distracted by the nonsense because there's a lot to discuss. America, I warn you that today's show is not for the faint-hearted, at least the first 15 minutes of this. By the way, hello, America. The world is getting all geared up for the next peace flotilla. It's being prepared right now, and it's set to depart for the Gaza Strip late next month. And what is it, about 1,000 people are attending? Oh, it's going to be good. Forget about the plight of the Christians in China, or the Christians in Iraq, or the Coptic Christians in Egypt, or the Jews in Israel. Let's concentrate as a planet on the plight of the Palestinians. Let's make sure they're heard. I'm telling you, mark my words, it's going to seem all logical by September. A Palestinian state will happen, and Israel will be sold down the river. It will happen. I believe the setup is all being placed right now, and it all starts to roll over the summer. Now, at the same time that the current administration could not contain their excitement about the responsibility to protect doctrine, which was deemed an acceptable reason to start a conflict, dare I call it a war, with Libya. The responsibility to protect idea was conjured up by Samantha Power. There she is, little Miss Cass Sunstein. She is no fan of Israel. One of the core principles, and this is important that you get this, on responsibility to protect, where a population is suffering serious harm as a result of internal war, insurgency, repression, or state failure, and the state in question is unwilling or unable to halt or avert it, the principle of non-intervention yields to the international responsibility to protect. Do you have it? There is no such thing as a sovereign border anymore. It's your responsibility as a globe to intervene. Got it? Let me give you some numbers here. Before we intervened in Libya, the death toll was 1,000. That's bad. In Syria, they're screaming, we've got a responsibility to protect. 400. Let me give you another number. 35,000. 35,000. That's the number of people killed on our border in drug-related killings since December 2006. If 2006 in December sounds familiar, it's when Felipe Calderon took office and declared war on the drug gangs, and he's clearly losing. Execution-style killings, shootouts, towns being burned down, kidnappings, attacks on authorities, fear, chaos. it's getting worse. The killings jumped 60% in 2010. 15,273. That is up from 9,616 the previous year. Estimate for this year already at 2,833. Mass graves are now being found at an alarming rate. Any mass grave should be alarming. Usually, it's our troops that find the mass graves. But now they're becoming a routine discovery on our border in Mexico. People are beginning to have the courage to say something. Just last week, authorities found a mass grave with 30 bodies in it. This discovery comes on the heels of another mass grave found in the border region with at least 126 people inside that grave. People in this farming town of 60,000 were afraid to say anything. They watched as people were killed and dumped into mass graves, afraid to say help. They didn't know who to ask for help. Most of the bodies that the authorities are now finding are being killed execution style, but not with bullets. I warn you, this next part of this story is pretty disturbing. But I think you need to hear the scene. This is what they believe happened in the town of San Fernando. 177 people have just been found in the largest mass grave to date. Most of these people were simply stopped at a roadblock set up by drug lords. Imagine yourself in this situation. Most of the people, they believe, were pulled and dragged off buses one by one. Then they were stripped of their IDs and their bus ticket stubs, so no one could identify them. Then the report says that they were killed with blunt trauma to the head, which explains the lack of bullet casings in the graves and explains the sledgehammer that was found. Now imagine you're on a bus. You're just minding your own business. And the bus is stopped, and now you see people being pulled out one by one, being dragged out, and somebody is putting their foot on their back as somebody else takes a sledgehammer and crushes their head. Well, you're in a whole different category of hell now, aren't you? Oh, yeah, I know. I'm hoping this for the New York Times is not too depressing. I hope this isn't too conspiratorial for them to understand. Sledgehammers are being used, not bullets. And it's not because there's a shortage of bullets. It's because we are dealing with evil. The Washington Post is reporting that the cartels are not just taking areas over with firepower anymore. They are taking them over with sheer terror. One San Fernando resident reported that it is getting completely out of control. They're not just going after the rich and the people with money. They're doing it for their kicks. They're doing it for power. They kidnapped a local farmer's son. They demanded $10,000. He's not a rich man. $10,000. He didn't have $10,000. He managed to scrape together $5,000. It's all he had. He sent it to them. So they sent half of his son back to him. Just this weekend, 4 women and a teenage girl were found stripped, their throats slashed in an Acapulco beauty parlor. In the same city last month, 5 children were killed in a 5-day stretch, ages 4 to 15 years old. The 4-year-old's mother was found bound, gagged, and she had been gunned down in her car. The 4-year-old was sitting next to her mother in the car, so they shot her in the chest, killing her too. Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about the president's birth certificate, shall we? No, I think that's really important, his birth certificate. Let's talk a little bit about what Google is doing, and did he recognize Easter? That's so important right now, isn't it? What the hell is wrong with us? 35,000 people dead 35,000 people. 15,000 in the last year. Do we have a responsibility to protect? If your answer is no, Mr. President, it doesn't seem real consistent with Libya. Do you even care? Would you at least agree that we should try to stop the violence from spilling over into our country? Don't think it can't happen here? Ask the people in Brownsville, Texas. They know. But many are afraid even in America. Someone driving on Highway 77 Easter Sunday noticed something on the overpass. In Brownsville, Texas, they phoned it in. It ended up being an IED. This is not a picture from Baghdad. This is a picture from America. You remember IEDs, improvised explosive devices that the terrorists used as their most prolific weapon in Iraq? It caused most of the problems for our troops. If you remember, most of the IEDs were made in Iran. Oh, wait a minute. Hang on. Before we get to the birth certificate thing, let's not forget about the training manual found in the Arizona desert along a known smuggling route that celebrates suicide bombers. Fox reported exclusively on this. Have you seen it anyplace else? The book, In Memory of Our Martyrs, was published in Iran and has glowing biographies of suicide bombers and other militants who died while committing terrorist attacks. Authorities said the IED looked like a pineapple grenade, except it came with a timer device. The highway was shut down. Bomb squad sent the robot in to detonate it. Some now are just brushing this off, saying, oh, well, it's just a poorly made device. It couldn't have done much damage anyway. Oh, well, I feel so much better now. Shouldn't be worried about that. Really? Can we not worry about the quality of the bomb and worry about the fact that someone is making bombs and putting them on American bridges? Now, who could possibly be doing that? No, let's talk about the birth certificate. Mexican soldiers, we don't want to talk about the Los Zetas. They blew up at least 22 cars and killed dozens of people in the last 2 weeks in Mexico. What is their weapon of choice, America? If you say IED, bingo! But wait, that's Mexico, not Texas. Who are the Zetas? Do you even know? They are the elite former special forces with the Mexican military. These are the people that they were going to stop the drug lords, but they defected. They defected from the Mexican military in the late 1990s, and they have been breeding more. They're particularly feared because they were trained by the American military elite. We went down with a responsibility to protect. We tried to help. They were sent in to fight the drug cartels. Now they are the drug cartels. Here's the important part. Los Zetas now are operating in the U.S., and they have been blamed for hundreds of kidnappings and murders along the U.S. border. But is anybody worried about that? Hell no. They often work alongside Mexican drug cartels who are operating, now it is reported, in as many as 230 affiliate cities here in the United States. The CIA believes the Zetas may be also getting help from terrorist organizations such as Al-Qaeda and Hezbollah. No! This crisis is far larger and far closer to home than the plight of the poor Palestinians. Is there any other conflict that has killed as many in the last 4 years than the Mexican drug cartels and the Zetas have killed on our borders? 35,000 dead. The genocide in Rwanda and Darfur comes to mind, but we didn't seem to have a responsibility to protect there. Couldn't get anybody to pay attention to that one, could we now? Hundreds of thousands have died there in the last 4 years. But the world still has no responsibility to protect 35,000 deaths in Mexico. Do you know how many that is? Well, we've lost 35,000 people before, but you have to go back to the Korean War to find it.